Welcome to Momentum Investing, property investing made easy. One of the world's top podcasts on property investing, bringing you the top experts in the field so you can learn firsthand what it takes to create passive income and take control over your financial future.
Hi, and welcome to the Momentum Investing podcast. I am so excited about today's show because we have none other than the co-founder of Momentum Property Education, Lukasz Brzyski, on the show. Now, I asked Lukasz to join us because of his background. You know, he's done international investing. He came from Poland, moved to Sweden, invested in the UK. You know, he's really done it internationally. And there are a lot of lessons here to be learned. He spoke at the Virtual Property Summit a couple of weeks ago, and he shared about how he looks at risk mitigation, how he looks at building up his teams. And it was such a popular session that I wanted to have him come on the show. Now, if you are a longtime listener of the show, thank you so much. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. I know most of you have already left us reviews on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't, please do. We really, really appreciate it. It helps us get the podcast out there to more people. So it really does mean a lot to us. And whenever you meet anyone in property, please share the Momentum Investing podcast because it's brilliant, right? And if you're a new guest to the show, welcome. We're really excited to have you. Every Tuesday, we have an episode coming out with amazing experts from all over the world talking about property, talking about entrepreneurship, talking about mindset, and talking about the details and how to build a property portfolio. So make sure you subscribe to podcasts wherever you listen to podcasts so that you get the update every Tuesday when the episode comes out. Now, are you guys ready to get into the nuts and bolts of it here together with Lukasz? Well, I hope so, because here we go. Lukasz, welcome. Well, I shouldn't say welcome to the show. You're one of the co-hosts, but welcome to this episode.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so we're super excited to hear from you, hear about your background. So maybe to start out, I mean, obviously you're from Poland, you moved to Sweden, you invest in the UK. You know, give us a little background. Why are you investing in the UK? Could you just not decide where to end up, or what happened there?
Yeah, so it's not like I'm so much indecisive now. So I started investing in the UK because I did a very, very deep analysis of the market, and you know, it was 6 years ago when I started. I became an investor by choice. I always emphasize that because I always say that I was a landlord by choice, by accident, but the investor by choice. Because when I moved, as Daniel mentioned, I moved from Poland to Sweden, where I followed my wife actually, who got the job there. And then I started to look around. I started to look around because simply once you start, because when you move between countries, you sort of start to think beyond your area, and I think that was a good and quite important step in my life. When I moved out of my country, I started to look around, saying, okay, so borders are not a limit at all. And I think that was a big mindset shift which I had right in the beginning. And since we rented our apartment back in Krakow, we sort of by choice, because we moved out from the country, I quickly realized that, you know, it's actually bringing quite lucrative profits every month, like just for nothing. Just, you know, own the property, your money just comes to your pocket. It was 10 years ago. So I started looking into property market in general. I looked at Sweden, I looked at Poland, of course, and I looked at the UK. I spent a few months, and now you can probably understand why I'm a risk mitigation expert. I spent a few months talking to people, analyzing the market, reading all the news, reading all the articles I could find, and then I finally stepped into the market. So it took me a while to get there. And then things started to flow quite quickly. We bought the first property. At the second property, we turned down a few deals, even during the purchase process, because of the risk. It was too high. I didn't want to take the risk, and I think you should not be afraid of taking bold decisions when you see that things are not going the way you want. And I think that was one of the lessons. Yeah, so, you know, I got a few properties, I built a portfolio, I tried different strategies, I tried rent to rent, I tried social housing, which is quite risk risk-free, not risk-free. Now there's no risk-free investment, but it's quite low-risk investments. Now I'm looking into some other strategies. So I'm actually have quite a few interesting things coming. Yeah, so
all right, awesome. Well,
it's
tell
been a
us about
journey.
those first deals, because it wasn't the straightforward ride. You didn't just buy them and get cash flow, which is obviously what we try to help our students do. They have smooth deals, but it comes from experience, right? What was your first deal, and what happened in that deal?
Yeah, so the first deal that I completed, I turned down a few deals, as I said, before I completed the first deal. So I had 2 deals in the pipeline that were in the purchase process, but there were some issues with sellers, with vendors, and I just pulled out because they were not worth money, time, and risk. But my first deal was actually quite a ride. It was surprisingly on the budget, but it took almost 2 years longer than I expected. Right. So I started the first deal, and then I bought 2 other deals in the meantime, and I completed 2 other deals in the meantime, because, well, I think I ignored a lot of different signs that I should have paid attention to, and I think that's one of the things that are quite common mistake by beginning investors. You just want to get things done. You're so excited, right? You just almost see the cash flow in your account, so you ignore. You just like a horse who doesn't look on the side. Just follow the numbers. But then there are signs that you should pay attention to, about people you work with, about certain things in the property. So yeah, and I think don't get too excited. Look at the numbers and calculate things with cold blood. Otherwise, you can get issues. And there were a number of issues with that deal. One of the problems was, what I didn't know in the beginning, was that my sourcing agent changed his name right before he sold me the deal, and he changed his name for the reason, right?
Wow.
People just don't change names like that. He had a few issues with law, which I didn't know at the time. Right. He sold me the deal. The deal was a very scruffy property, which was nice, and that's the property we look at. But he didn't keep his deadlines.
Right.
What happened was that he actually lost his liquidity, and he was taking on new investors to pay for the previous deals.
Oh no.
Right. Yeah. So luckily I was in the beginning of the chain.
Right. So you were one of the people he was taking new investors to pay back in the Ponzi scheme he was creating. Exactly.
So I was quite lucky, even though I think at some point he still ran out of money.
Yeah.
And I just kicked him out from the deal, and then I learned the whole story essentially. But the things that were like, first of all, the quality of the work was not up to the standard, I would say. Actually, you could say it was quite high standard, because what we realized was that, for instance, the hot water from the boiler was connected to the flush in the toilet. So that's actually a quite premium.
Yeah, exactly. A hot flush toilet. Yeah.
So those kind of issues, and of course missing deadlines, a lot of unfinished stuff, and so on. Luckily I met a few fantastic people who helped me on the way to turn it around, but it costed me a few gray hairs, a hair at the time, and a few sleepless nights. So yeah, there were a few issues, and I think there were a lot of lessons I carried with me.
Yeah, let's break this down a moment, because that was a lot of info really, really quick. And as you said, you bought this property, you actually completed and completed other properties while waiting for it. But let's break down some of the lessons. So just to get things straight, you'd looked around for a bunch of different deals. You'd found this sourcing agent who Well, it turned out he just changed his name, so it didn't come up anything negative about him on Google because he had a new squeaky clean name, which is horrible. I mean, imagine how bad this person has to be if he changes his name. I've heard of companies changing their names to avoid bad negative press, but a person, that's insane. But all right, so he'd done that. He sells you this deal, and then you as you say, well, one of the things I think that's really important that you said is that new investors, especially on their first deal, fall in love with the property and fall in love with the spreadsheet and the idea of the cash flow. And you saw signs, and we're going to get to that in a moment, what those signs kind of were. I would love to hear that. But you kept on going. And that's a story I hear so much. I get a lot of calls from, I have to say, our competitors' students. So I apologize if anyone running one of those companies is listening. Your students call me and ask me for help with their deals. And I'm glad to say this hasn't happened with our students because they tend to do their due diligence and they've heard this story, but I've heard this from a lot of new investors, how they kind of said, well, we just wanted to get our first deal done. And, so they take a deal that maybe isn't good enough. They avoid the warning signs just because they want to, get that check mark. I've done a deal. And that's fine. It's great to want to do a deal, but this deal took 2 years out of your time. You're so lucky that it didn't cost you money. People later in that chain with that guy lost lots and lots of money, which means, the check mark, I've done a deal, for a 2-year delay, and for some of these people, maybe a 50 to 100,000 pound loss. That's not that you're paying too much for that check mark, right? So if those warning signs come, get out of the deal. Don't do it. I mean, I walked away from deals that I've already spent, 10,000 pounds on surveys and planning work and architects and all that. And finally, we had to walk away and say, nope, this deal wasn't worth it. And it's horrible. It's like 10,000 pounds. It's just dumped. I'm never going to see that money again, and I don't have an asset for it. But I know that if I'd continued down that deal, I would have been throwing hundreds of thousands. So it's like, well, you say, don't throw good money after bad money, right?
Yeah.
So, Lou, what were some of these signs? So you got into the deal, and this is where it's interesting, because I think most people don't understand or know what signs to look for. So what were the signs that you saw when working with this person?
Right. So first of all, I did a proper due diligence, or I thought I did a proper due diligence on the person. Right. I actually met them in person in Leeds. I went to their office. Office, it was supposed to be their office. Again, I didn't mark the sign, right? So they rented a space in a like a conference room in a
co-office. Yeah, I've heard of companies that do that claim to have an office, and in some cases, you'll go to a meeting there, but if you ever call the co-office space, they'll tell you no, they don't have an office here.
So they were always referring to our office. Then you come and don't see the name, right? And it's like a bit confusing, but that's fine.
It's not fine. You thought it was fine. That's the first warning sign right there. Right.
Yeah. Yep. Then we met them, and they were talking a lot about.
And I should make a point, though. I just want to make a point there. Is a company doesn't have to have an office. I mean, with COVID, most companies are decentralized now, so you don't necessarily have to have an office anymore. But it's that the signal here is not that they didn't have an office; it's that they claimed to have an office when they didn't. That is the difference here. Is that they were already lying, and you hadn't even gotten into the relationship. That's the key part there.
Yep.
So I just want to break that down, because obviously a lot of companies, we don't have an office. I'm sitting here, you're sitting in Poland. We have employees all over the world, and we have a digital space where we meet up, but we don't claim to have an office. And that's the big difference.
Oh yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. So then I asked them for references, right? Because that's what we do when we talk to people, and they said, like, we don't really have the references. We have. I mean, they didn't. Because you would like to see the deals they've done, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now I know that.
Know their experience. Yeah.
Exactly. So so they didn't show me the deals at that time. They only show me the quality of the finish, right? So they were like showing me how this property will look like, And they were saying it's like our other deals. But then what you see, you don't really see the real pictures. You see pictures of
and you don't
of
even know if this
visual-
was other deals. You didn't get to learn what deal it was, who was the investor. They
Exactly.
essentially could have gone on a Rightmove and pulled some pictures from Rightmove and
Exactly.
showed them to you.
Exactly. So
Right.
that was the second
So
sign.
when you're asking for references, and this is something we do, in the Momentum Property Education Mentorship Program and Mastermind, we give you 7 super qualified sourcing agents. And one of the steps of the process is we ask them for references. And what's good for us now, I mean, you were new, you hadn't started investing, but now we know most people in the UK property market. So if someone's going to give us references, we know the person they're going to refer us to. If they haven't done a deal with anyone we know, well, already that is a warning sign. So I can usually call a friend and go, hey, you've done a deal with this person, how was it? And I get that review. And that is a big difference, because it's not just, and that's important, because when you ask for references, it's very easy for someone. Now, they didn't even go through the effort of giving you any references, but essentially they could have asked their dad, their mom, and the brother to give references. And you would have been like, oh, great, that's 3 different people. That's awesome. And they didn't even go through that effort. But if you know the person they're referring to, that person doesn't want to ruin the relationship with you to be a reference for someone else. You usually get the true story. All right, so they didn't even give you references. So that was the second warning sign.
That was a second warning sign. Yeah,
and you ignored that one too.
there were a few things that sound very legit and sound very credible. Like they were showing them as credible people. So one of them was actually a mortgage broker.
Right.
So if you deal with mortgage broker, you think like, okay, so this might be a reliable person, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm not sure how actually good a mortgage broker he was, especially he's changed his name, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're a mortgage broker, you probably have a quite good brand, or you should aim for. You should
have a brand, yeah.
So of course, I didn't know that he changed his name. Then he was also saying that he works a lot of international students. He's primarily working with international students in Hong Kong.
Right.
Which he did actually. It was part of a scheme, was that he was working with internationals.
Yeah, because it takes longer for us to notice it as we're not there by the property, we don't often see, and especially when they're over in Hong Kong, which is the other side of the world. It's not like they're coming over once a month.
Exactly, and that again, if that's something that sounds reliable as well. Like if people trust them and they invest with them, even though they can't just come over easily. And it also sounded reliable. And then, we stepped. They showed me the deal, and numbers looked very good. I did my very brief due diligence, and numbers were quite high. And since I'm usually quite cautious, I always recommend doing the 3 different calculations, like for a sort of realistic numbers, the optimistic ones, and the pessimistic ones, right?
Yeah.
So I had the pessimistic numbers in my spreadsheet. It was fine, and even for the pessimistic ones, the numbers which were much lower than they showed me, looked quite well. So I
just want to make that point as well. This is something, again, when I get phone calls from people, sometimes it's the agent's fault and things, but often it's that people have just trusted the agent's numbers. Again, if you're one of our students listening, I know you don't do this, you are awesome, but I get this from other investors. They just trust the numbers from the sourcing agent, and sometimes that's fine. Multiple of the agents we recommend are very conservative. So usually if you run your own numbers, they might even be better. But other agents are often very positive, right? They're salespeople. They're trying to sell you the deal. So they'll send over numbers. And obviously, as long as they can back it up, that doesn't necessarily have to be a warning sign. Say they found 4 comparables, 2 are 90K, one's 100K, and one's 110. And instead of choosing maybe a 95K valuation, they say 105 valuation. It's like, there was a valuation at 110, there was one at 100, 105 is reasonable. They just ignored the 290s. It's like they can back it up. But if they had given you a valuation of 120 based on that, now that's your warning sign. Now you're like, well, where the highest sale ever in this area is 110. Where did you get 120,000 pound valuation? And that's where you start getting warning signs. And this is what I see with a lot of people is they're not using the 100 or 95 as I would, or even 105. They're using 120, and then the deal doesn't stack up, and that's really rough because the deal then could have gone perfectly, but it's still worth 15,000-20,000 pounds less than they calculated with. But you've done that part. You've done your calculation correctly.
Yeah, and also some of the just to add to this, some of the sourcing agents also suggest or claim that you'll get a commercial valuation on the property, right, which is not necessarily always available, especially for you,
especially for internationals. Because what they can be doing, and that's a really important point, because sometimes they'll say, look, you'll get a commercial valuation, but they might be used to working with Brits, local domestic Brits who would get a commercial valuation. But so it's not that they're making things up or they're overselling you. It's just that they're working usually with a different type of clientele. In some cases, though, if they say, hey, you're going to get a commercial valuation on this 4-bed HMO, well, maybe don't listen to them because you're not. That's your warning sign. But it's where they're reasonable and where they're trying to make outlandish claims. That's where the line is from just they're a salesperson to that's a warning sign. Yeah. All right, so they gave you another warning sign. Their numbers were way too optimistic.
Oh yeah. But I said, okay, I have my negative or my pessimistic numbers in my spreadsheet. That's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay, right?
Right. So you're thinking you got their super positive, you got your optimistic numbers, you got what's the realistic numbers, and then you got the pessimistic numbers. And even with the pessimistic numbers, you're happy with this deal. Meaning, there's a lot that can go wrong from their numbers to your numbers before the deal goes wrong. So you're going, all right, look, I'm still excited. I'm a new investor. I want to do my first deal. All right, we'll take the risk. Let's do it.
Exactly. And then we stepped into the purchase process. We got the solicitor. We got all the searches. Everything looked fine with the deal, with the property. And at that time, the property the price was 70,000, and we had like over 80 in the refurbs. Right, you can imagine it was quite a decent refurb, a conversion actually. It was my first deal, actually, big conversion. Why start low, right? Yeah. And then we're about to complete. I'm signing the contract, and I get a contract from the solicitor saying that we are completing the deal and the price is 77,000. I'm like, no, there might be something wrong, right? I said, no, the solicitor says, I got this number from your sourcing agent or from the solicitor actually. And I was like, all right, so I'm calling the guy and I'm saying like, dude, like what's going on, right? And he says, oh, we didn't tell you. I thought somebody else told you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, we had to put a higher price because there was a second buyer, right? I was like, all right. Fine. Fine with the numbers, it was fine.
Yeah.
Right. Again, I had this margin in my numbers still. But again, a warning sign, right? Something
someone
wrong.
Just raised the price without telling you,
without knowing me. Yeah,
is nuts. Yeah.
And we're like,
but again, it's one of those things where it's like, communication error. It happens.
Yeah,
exactly. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and you move on.
Yeah. And it was like we're just literally completing, right? So it doesn't matter. Like, all right.
You don't want to pull out then, especially when it's your first deal. You don't want to throw in the towel at the last moment. So
exactly. So it was fine. We complete on the deal. The works have started. I started to get some first pictures, but then they planned the refurb for 3 months. It was a conversion from a 3-flat house into 9-bed HMO, so with ensuite, so quite a decent work. And as I see, things start to slow down. Like you of course you arrange it with your project manager that they will send you pictures every week. So I start to pictures like first every 7 days, then every 10 days, and then every 2 weeks because somebody didn't, somebody wasn't
time,
there.
They had the wrong camera. They had the wrong
exactly. So luckily enough, I was staging my payments, and that's again something to mention to all our students: never pay everything up front, never pay 50% up front. Stage your payments, right?
I got
that was a big
stories
lesson.
about that as well, where I did not follow that advice on my first couple deals, and that cost me. So yep, that's a very, very good tip, guys. Listen to that. All right. So you were staging your payments. So you were only paying when they sent you the pictures, is that right?
Yes.
Right. So they were getting really angry with you, and you were saying, look, I can't pay until I get the pictures.
Yep, that was it. I said, like, it's clear. I mean, you can they had a really nice Gantt chart with, like, when things will be done, because you can see in the calendar. So they were claiming they need to pay them, and I told them, no, guys, like, I'm not paying anything before I see the result, right?
Yeah. That's brilliant, because that's one of the things too, and that's an important follow-up to the staged payments. You might agree weekly payments, but if you're not actually seeing that the weekly work is being done, well, then you can't pay out the weekly payment. So just saying I'm doing staged payments and paying out every week isn't enough. You got to make sure, let me see that the pictures are done. Let me see that the refurb is being done. Then I'll pay.
Yep. So then meantime, I started to then at some point in the refurbs, I'm normally calling or WhatsApping the project manager and the builder. I got both at my disposal, and then suddenly the builder stops to receive my call, like stops to pick up my phones. Again, a warning sign, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't respond to messages, etc. And then, well, I finally get in hold of the project manager, and he says, like, yeah, we had some issues with the builders. We had to change the builders.
Okay.
I'm saying, all right, has anybody noticed me? That we're changing the builders.
Why haven't I been notified of that?
Like,
that I don't have the same builder anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
So they swapped the builder. And then I started to get calls from the old builder at some point, like 2 weeks later, saying, hey, do you know, can you give me the phone number from of the project manager? And it's like, yeah, guy, you just left my deal. Like, you have contact number to my project manager.
Yeah.
And they say, like, well, no, they changed the phone number.
Okay.
So I'm trying to call my project manager. It's just nobody picks up, right?
Okay. Right.
Because they swapped the phone number. And then from that moment on, so there were a lot of things happening. Things started to go really quick. So apparently the first builders were not paid by the project manager, so with my money. And the second builder started to do the works, but since they were not paid as well, of course, they were slowing things down as well. And at some point, I just said, like, guys, like, go away, like, go out. Like, I refuse.
Yeah.
I refuse you any entrance to my building anymore. Like, you're not allowed, simply.
Right. Yeah.
And
you got a locksmith to come by and change the locks, essentially?
Exactly. The locksmith came and changed the keys. And I got the next project manager who stepped in right away. And they sent me a lot of pictures from the site. Even though by the way, I saw the property on the way. I saw the property during the refurbs before, so I was visiting the site. Sometimes even without notice, which was quite interesting because nobody was there, as you can probably imagine.
Right.
But again, signs, right? Signs, marking the signs. And then the new builder came in, was fantastic people. They came in. Actually, Carl Ager was the project manager, or their company.
Carl Ager has been on the show before.
Who's been in the show, exactly, who I'm gonna invite again because he had so much good insights. So they helped me with the deal. They sent me all the pictures of, like, as I said, the warm water connected to the flush toilet in the toilet. It was like,
just like ridiculous mistakes. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing, the only reason why they were doing that, I believe, was to show pictures that things are working.
Yeah, right.
But nobody would check that the water in
No,
the
you
toilet
can't
is
see that in a picture. Yeah,
no, you can't see, right? You can see that the flash is working, right?
yeah,
But you can't see that it's warm water. It's like really bizarre things
yeah.
happening. So yeah, everything turned out to be good up until, again, a few months later, when I was introduced to a group of other investors who were actually, screwed over by the same person. And there was a group organizing a hunt on him, and they actually managed to get a claim court for the guy.
Wow.
So yeah, things turned out well. Not all the money were recovered for the people, but luckily for me, since I was staging my payments, I only paid up until the work was done. And then if the new builder and the new project manager came in, I was just paying them for the outstanding part.
For the work they were doing, yeah.
Exactly, for the work they were doing. So those, I was quite lucky. Like maybe it cost me like, I don't know, maybe 2,000, 3,000 pounds, which is nothing compared.
Which is those two payments that went to the project manager just before you fired them.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's such a key, because I've made the mistake of, I've paid builders up front, I've paid without getting pictures. I've made those mistakes. So I'm really impressed by the fact that already on your first deal, you were so on it, you made sure you got those results. You weren't just trusting them. And that's huge. That's where the difference is. That's why you didn't lose money. So it wasn't luck. It was the fact that you were on it. And the fact that when you saw that, wait a sec, I'm paying the project manager and the builders aren't getting paid, you stopped paying and you kicked them out. You went out and found another project manager who turned out to do a really, really good job, and where you built a relationship since too. And he's been on the show here. So that's some amazing lessons. Sadly, we're going to have to wrap it up there, but I hope everyone, take this with you. I mean, yes, in the mentorship and mastermind, we introduce you to some brilliant quality sourcing agents, but you still got to be smart about it. You still got to make sure you're getting your pictures. You still got to stage your payments with the builders. You still got to do your own due diligence. It's your deal at the end of the day. It's your responsibility. We make sure you have the tools, the knowledge, the know-how, and the contacts. And if something goes wrong, we're always there to help you. But it's important that you do the work and that you don't let anyone trick you on it. Like I said, I've been pulled by the nose and tricked that way. And Lukasz, I'm really happy that you didn't do it. And I think we all can take some very valuable lessons from there. So Lukasz, to connect with you, what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, I'm always available at the momentuminfo@momentumpropertyeducation.com email. That's
info@momentumpropertyeducation.com.
Or Lukasz at momentumpropertyeducation.com. So those two websites, of course, those two emails.
And of course, in the International Property Investors Facebook group, you can either find it by searching for International Property Investors, or by going to the Momentum Property Education Facebook page and find the linked groups, and you'll see the International Property Investors there. We're over 1,500 investors now in that community, which is amazing.
Isn't it?
And it's great how helpful people are. I just posted today about the top contributors for the last month, and people are just so active, so in there, helping out, giving value, supporting. So if you're not as a listener, if you're not a member already, please join the International Property Investors group. And of course, if you want to join the Momentum Property Education mentorship or mastermind programs, you can go to getmomentummentor.com and apply. We're actually creating a new video about it, which we're really excited about, because we got a lot of great testimonials from amazing students who've said great things about the program. Since of course they're buying property, right? They're getting results. So if you want to join them, if you want to leave a testimonial in the future, please join the program so we can help you out, get you that first deal. Obviously, if you're a student, we always love getting your testimonials, both the reviews on the podcast, and of course, when you send us a video testimonial, that means so much for us. So please keep those coming. We really appreciate it. So yeah, everyone, please, thank you so much for listening. If you want to join, go to getmomentummentor.com. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so. Connect to Lukasz at info@momentumpropertyeducation.com. And I'll see you guys next week again for the next episode of the Momentum Investing Podcast. If you are subscribed, you got notifications on, You'll get a buzz when that comes through Tuesday morning, the 19th of May. So I'll see you then. Thank you again, Lukasz, for joining us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Everyone, thank you for listening, and I'll see you in a week.